Welcome, everyone. It's Gerry Andrews, a body mind coach and massage therapist, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation with. And this time it's in conversation with Tamsin Hartley. Hello, Tamsin.
Hi, thank you for inviting me along to be in conversation with you.
Thank you. So it's been real ambition of mine, in a sense, to do this with you. I know we've talked many times about lots of things. And I've learned all about clean language and actually done the training with you as part of the listening space training that you do. Um, but I've always wanted really to have the chance to explore the work that you do and the work that I do because we sort of work in very similar ways, I think, both so coaching and other aspects too. So yeah, great to have a chance to have a chat with you today and explore a little bit of the work that we do and some of the other things we've started to do together as well, which will be interesting. So, Tamsin, do you want to just say a little bit about you and clean language, which is obviously some of the work that you're involved with, and listening space as well, which is the your work. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess I wonder if it's helpful just to give a little bit of background because I started life as a physiotherapist
Mm.
for about 10 years working in the NHS, and most of my work was with people with neurological problems,
Okay.
head injury. So I've always been fascinated in the way that the brain works.
Mm.
And then I took time out to bring up young family and retrained as a coach. And I think I brought that interest in the body from my background as a physio. So I work as a coach now, mind body coach. I also specialize in working with adults with neurodiversity, neurodivergence,
Okay. Mm.
dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism.
Mm.
Um, so yes, and one of the things that really grabbed my attention was when I was introduced to this method of inquiry called clean language. And I found these questions to be a really wonderful way of helping people to connect with their embodied experience, but in quite a creative way as well.
Mm.
Because the questions that David Grove created, clean language questions, um, invite metaphor. And
Mm.
when metaphors arise, they help to capture the essence of your experience in a very tangible way. And maybe giving an example would
Mm.
demonstrate that. So, a client that I was working with fairly recently, who happens to be autistic and has a diagnosis of the ADHD, but she also has pain. She has fibromyalgia. Um, and she talked about, it just came up in the session, I go to work. I have this metaphor of a bucket that gets filled with balls of discomfort. My bucket's already full by the time I get to work. And she said, for example, this morning, my son slammed the door and I could feel scared. I
Right.
just had this feeling triggered in me. So these questions, clean language questions, asked in a particular way that I call the listening space, helped. He said, okay, do you want to explore that feeling a little bit more? And she said, yes, scared. I find it really difficult to let go of that feeling. So I
Mm.
asked her some clean questions. What kind of scared? Is there anything else about scared? Whereabouts is scared? And she said, well, scared is in my chest. I can feel it right now.
Mm.
Um, does scared have a size or a shape? She said, yes. It's like a dark, dark storm cloud. And it's like the pressure is building up. And I've no idea when the thunder and the lightning's going to happen. And the thing about lightning is it can cause damage.
Right.
So these questions helped her connect with her embodied experience, This is how
Mm.
scared feels in her body.
Mm.
And they give a very tangible sense of how really unpleasant it is for this particular person. And she carries that with her to work, and it's not.
Wow. Wow.
So
It,
yeah, and
it,
you can take that a little further because so the listening space combines the principles of mindful exploration.
mm.
So
Mm.
staying with that feeling then became part of the process, but at the same time bringing messages of safety to herself.
Mm. Mm.
Breathe into the feeling,
Mm.
being in fear of the feeling itself. And she actually said, afterwards, it felt like something that was going to progress into a panic attack.
Right.
So I said, okay, stay with that feeling, breathe into it. It was a kind of 9 out of 10 of intensity. I said, just know that you're safe in your body right now. Feel the feeling of your feet and the seat beneath you, and scared, not trying to change it, just being curious about it. And within a minute, 2 minutes, it had gone down in intensity from a 9 to a 7, 6, 5. And staying with that feeling, it gradually reduced to a 2 out of 10. And she realized that just knowing that this was emotional energy that would pass through her body if she allowed herself to feel it
Mm.
was an absolute revelation to her. And it's something she carried on using again and again, and actually was able to use with her children, connecting with the feeling initially through those questions, through the clean language questions. Storm
Absolutely.
cloud appears and the storm cloud disappears. That makes sense.
Beautiful, beautiful. And again, it's such a simple process, isn't it? You're not having to think of, any deep, insightful things to say or to, deep questions to ask. And yet, just the imagery of all of that really evokes the real deep sense of it all. But as you say, I think just being able to sit with it allows things to settle. And that is so much part of, the work that, you and I do, I suppose, in our different ways, but definitely the work that I see with my clients too. And I think this whole idea about people not being able to vocalize the feeling, and yet when expressed as a metaphor, it makes so much sense. And I think we talk about language, I suppose, or we use embodied language, don't we? Talking about somebody being, a pain in the neck or whatever it might be, and wonder why actually we have that pain in the neck, isn't it, really? And we really, really feel what's there. So
Mm.
absolutely, I think, the use of language is a key part of it. But I think as coaches, the process itself can sometimes feel as if we've got to come up with some deeper insight, or we've got to reframe the thing that people are talking about so that it's almost, we're trying to make sense of their words and their meaning in order to reflect that back. And that's us getting in the way of the other person. Whereas I think, as you're saying, with clean language, the questions are very simple, but the meaning of it all and what it actually allows a person to do is really very, very deep.
Very deep, and it allows the person to create their own meaning from it or to
Mm.
understand it for themselves.
Mm.
And very often, the metaphor changes, or
Yes.
the relationship with the embodied experience changes.
Mm.
And there's no way that I could know that that's going to be a metaphor. I can't, they're often referred to as autogenic metaphors, metaphors that arise within the person themselves. And
Mm.
because they arise from that person themselves, they're going to be a best fit. I'm going
Mm.
to give you another example from
Mm.
coaching that I
Mm.
had, because there's no way I'd have come up with this metaphor, but it had a really significant impact for this person. So This person works in the bank, called in because she was making cash errors at the end of the day. Real nightmare. Cashing up at the end of the day is it has to be quick. If you make an error, not only do you have to stay behind, your manager has to stay behind.
Mm.
And she said she talked about finding it difficult to concentrate. So concentration became the thing that we could explore. What kind of
Right.
concentration? Is there
Mm.
anything else about concentration? Whereabouts is concentration? And she realized that actually what would help her concentrate would be to construct a metaphoric glass box around her at the
Okay.
end of the day, because then she could see what other people were doing, but it would block out the noise.
Ah, interesting.
And, I couldn't have come up with something that was such a good fit for her. But the impact of that, and she was quite specific, it was 2 or 3 inches thick all
Right.
around her. And so she did this at the end of the day, time to cash up. And over the next few months, no more cash errors. But not only that, she went on to pass her driving theory test that she'd failed either 3 or 4 times. She'd already
Oh,
failed it
wow.
a few times. So, you know, it can reveal solutions
Mm.
that were hidden in plain sight, actually, but very specific to the individual.
And it's so empowering, isn't it, as a
Yeah.
process, because then people are able to, as you say, sort of create their own imagery
Yes.
that's actually serving a positive process for them.
Yes.
So it's a
There's so
really,
many
really powerful
examples.
process.
Yeah, so many lovely examples. I'm thinking of another one. But there are so many lovely examples, and it happens all the time. And it
Mm.
may be that I ask these questions, that I take something that the client has said, and we just do a little bit of exploring, like an island of exploring, and then we go on to do some other
Mm.
stuff, and then something else appears. Or it may be that the whole hour is more or less taken up with this very in-depth
I think
listening space.
I always loved how you explained that to me in our training session. You might have forgotten, but you referred to it as having a bubble of clean in a
Yes.
conversation. Because otherwise, sometimes, and I think this is, yeah, I was talking to somebody else about this not too long ago in relation to a workshop which we're going to be doing. We'll talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that. But she was sort of saying, oh, she hates sort of the clean language thing because it's always asking me these awkward questions about, what size and shape or color and all of that does my feeling have, and I can't sort of think about that. It doesn't sort of work for me. So it doesn't always, I suppose, hang for people, but it just works without you having to worry about it too much, I think. Could you say a little bit more about that, I
Yeah,
suppose?
well, about the not working sometimes, or about the not having to try too hard.
About not trying to try it too hard to try and understand it, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to actually speak to the not working, because I
Okay.
always say hold it lightly. You've got
Ah.
other tools, you've got other things that you can do, and maybe introduce the questions a bit another time, but hold it lightly always with
Mm,
this,
mm,
because I think that's important. I think one of the things that helped me understand clean language, I think it's something that one of the key people in the field, James Lawley, said, is that it's a modeling process,
mm.
but it's a bottom up modeling process. So if I ask you clean questions, I go from the understanding I know nothing about your experience. And I'm asking questions that help you, invite you to get a model, a sense of how you work.
Mm,
We have a lot of tools in coaching that are more top down.
mm, mm.
Myers-Briggs, for example, these are the categories, and we'll do an assessment and decide which ones you fit into. That's the top
Yes,
down
yes,
modeling process.
yes, absolutely.
And clean language, you're asking questions with having that invite the other person to model
Mm,
themselves, to get a sense
mm.
of how they work. You're kind of coming in with a clean slate, as it were.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's so, so important, isn't it, as a process
Yeah.
where whether it's coaching, whether it's sort of the therapeutic process as well,
Mm.
to not come in having made a lot of assumptions about the client, the person. And I think that's such a skill set which is needed across the board. And which is why I think the idea of using clean or being able to introduce an understanding of using clean language is so vital to so many different modalities. And this I think is the real value of it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we have such an innate um, discomfort, an innate desire to help others.
Mm,
But the risk is that becomes a sort of pull to rescue, a quick
mm,
fix. And actually, when you sit back and let someone explore their own experience in their own way,
mm,
you can set that to one side. And then very often quite magical things happen. And it's easier for you, for me as the coach, because
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we're not having to work very hard, particularly, are we? And we're
No,
just
just
asking the
become
question.
really fascinated. I mean, it is fascinating when, metaphors don't always appear, but when they do, and
Mm,
they often do, it becomes deeply fascinating. And I
mm,
think the other thing is that they often speak to a common humanity, a commonality. Um,
mm,
and so in a very constructive way. I can also be influenced by the metaphors and the way that they resolve. And I can think, okay, yeah, no, that's really interesting. It helps me to see my experience, my
mm,
life in a different way.
mm. Yes, it's a sort of two-way process that way,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
And I think, yeah, I just want to sort of move on to a little bit about, I suppose, the idea that these conversations that we've been having led to the idea of having a day to talk about how we might be able to combine the
yeah,
language and the words that we use. And again, I suppose a lot of this is also connected with Nick Pohl,
yeah,
who's a shiatsu practitioner and a fellow clean language practitioner as well, who's a good friend of ours. Um, and he's written a book, isn't he, which is called Words That Touch.
yeah.
And actually, I think we've, with his permission, stolen the title of that for the day
Yeah.
that we're going to be having, which is on the 8th of November in Ockley. And
Mhm.
we can give you more details about that as well. But yeah, for me, I think what was really fascinating and drove the idea for having a conversation and having a day around this was that as a massage therapist, but also as a body mind coach, I'm probably starting off with touch as the principal way of connecting with people. But having said that, so much of the work that I'm finding is valuable is actually having the conversations with the person, first of all, in order to understand them and understand the context of their lives as well. So that holistic approach and understanding the whole person, because this whole body and mind connection is crucial to any idea of them healing, I suppose, from whatever it is that they might be dealing with. But for many people as well, whether it's not just um, body workers, it could even be, hairdressers as well. People who are sort of working and are in touch with another person in different ways, but we start to have conversations. And sometimes it can sort of feel as if, well, are we just having a chat? But actually, we're also opening up. And I think the language that we use as part of this sort of therapeutic process where we're holding that space for another person is so, so powerful. And yet we have to understand and be quite careful and clear about the words that we use as well, isn't it? And I think this is where I think we wanted to try and create a day where we could combine touch as a process, but also combine the language that we might be using to talk about the body as well. And you mentioned we both talked about different things in a similar way, but you mentioned clean touch to me. And there is a whole process about that, which you could say a little bit more about, actually.
Yeah, clean touch is a process that was created by two body workers, Jackie Calderwood and Jenny
Mm,
Edge, and they ran a few days that I've been to. And whilst I don't use physical touch in my work,
mm,
it was it's a lovely way. It combines clean questions with offering the giving and receiving of touch. And what's really interesting is many body workers have a process which they work by. But this offers that, what kind of touch would you like to receive? And all
mm,
of a sudden, the receiver of touch is has to think about and connect with,
mm.
okay, yeah, what am I wanting? How do I want that? And that so there becomes a real dialogue between the giver and receiver of
Yeah.
touch that's invited through questions. And,
Yeah.
is that the right kind of touch? And is there anything else about wanting firm pressure on your shoulder? And and then what happens? Or
Mm,
what's happening now? So it's a lovely way of
mm,
there's no defined process for doing it. You could be in sitting, you could be in lying, whatever the receiver of touch is wanting at that moment. Uh,
mm.
so it's a very interesting way of being with another person.
And quite often, as as a massage therapist, as a body worker in various ways, we don't always, unless we are intending to use this type of work, we don't always enter into that dialogue. And we rarely ask the client, the person, yeah, how do you want to be touched? What is it like to have my hand here? And it can often feel as if, well, you're just being done to, isn't it? Quite often. You go for a massage, you lie there, you sort of can zone out and you don't engage with the process. Somebody's, manipulating the tissues sort of thing. But there's a lot of deeper levels to this work as well.
And I guess what would be interesting is that if you are a body worker, how much of what you're doing is making an assessment of um, the person you're working with. And how can you combine that ability to do that is part of your work with
Mm,
inviting a sort of cleaner approach. And so, yeah, I think
mm,
that's what partly I think would be really interesting to experiment with and to
mm,
invite reflection on and to see what people's experiences of
mm.
clean touch and how might that be relevant to the work that they're doing.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully I think the other day will it be of interest to like-minded people that we both sort of know, but also anybody else, I guess, who's sort of either working with people on a one-to-one basis, and also not just wanting to introduce maybe language into their bodywork, but also maybe thinking about, is there a way of introducing touch into my talking work, perhaps, as well, or at least certainly how I might be able to introduce an embodied language into the
Yeah.
language that I use.
Mm.
So, whether you're a hypnotherapist or a counselor or people like that who are sort of working with words, but how could those words be more physically received as well, isn't it? What does it mean for your body to hear those words?
And I'd like to come back kind of full circle to that story of scared, actually.
Mm,
What is the impact of words that touch?
mm,
She noticed that her pain reduced as the emotional energy passed through her body. So
mm.
yes,
Interesting.
she
Interesting.
started to make connections
Mm,
between body and mind that
mm,
actually impacted her levels of pain.
mm.
And pain is
Fascinating.
many people present with. Um, yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brilliant. Tamsin, thank you so much for having the chance to have this conversation with you, and we could go on for a longer time, I'm sure. Lots of things to
You'll
talk
have a chance to do that on the 8th of
about.
November.
8th of November. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And we'll catch up soon.